this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Welcome to the 2023 Project Orchids. This introduction will just be on the front of this first video. It's just basically for those who haven't joined in with Project Orchids before, it's just about what it is as a concept, that's all. And that's something you don't see very often, notes, mainly because I want to keep this short. It stops me waffling to a degree. Right, so the concept is we have 8 orchids that have been voted on by your good selves. They will be filmed once every 2 months throughout the year. In each video we will do some care for that orchid at that time of year. So you end up with a season's worth of care where relevant. I say where relevant because some orchids get the same care throughout the season, perhaps just increased watering. So we'll have a chat about each individual orchid, and in the first video we'll go over where you can find it if it's a species. If it's a hybrid, I'll try and track back to the species that went into it to say what part of the world those would come from. That gives you a bit of a clue as to how to look after it. We'll have a discussion about temperature ranges, and some basic information will go in the first video about that particular orchid. From that point on, that level of detail won't be necessary because it's in the first video, if you see what I mean. So we'll do that. Each orchid will get its own playlist, but I won't set up the playlists until we've got the second video up and running, because a playlist with one video in it is a bit daft, isn't it? So I'll wait till the second set. These first 2 months we will have 1 video a week, and they will be posted on Friday. So we will have a set so that you know when to expect the next video. The order they're going to come in is down to me. But the order they are in for the first 8 videos will then be repeated for the next 8 videos. Yeah? So the one that is second will always be second, if you see what I mean. They'll stick with that. And that's about it really. You'll find that the videos this time round in the Project Orchids, because of the nature of what I'm trying to do, they will appear a little bit more formal, but I also want to keep them relatively short each time so that they don't hold people for a length of time. But they will vary because certain orchids at certain times of year need more said, and other times of year very little, so they will vary. So that's the concept, and a reminder before we get going on the first video that I do now have memberships up and running. You can actually join the channel and become a member with a regular subscription to help support the channel, which helps buy new orchids, support the ones I've got, maintenance and kit, and the camera equipment and everything that goes with it. So your money is put to good use. It doesn't go in Roger's wine pocket, it goes in the orchid pot. So think about perhaps joining. The join button is on the channel, and there is a video with instructions how to do it on an iOS device, or some iOS devices, because it's a little difficult. Well, different. Put it that way. Okay, so without further ado, we'll get on with orchid number 1. Okay, so orchid number 1 is Dendrobium lindleyi, also known as aggregatum. This is in the section Densiflora. You can look up the orchids in an individual section. Dendrobiums are sort of unique in the way that they're categorized, because the dendrobiums are divided up already into sections. And as such, hardly ever get messed about with as far as naming is concerned. Although they do change sections sometimes, that doesn't mean they have to have their name changed. And it's very rarely something that's called a Dendrobium suddenly becomes called something else. So they're pretty static in the naming standards. I like this. Right, Dendrobium lindleyi. If you go to the... once upon a time, the story says there was a great big lump of earth and all the countries and everything were just one big lump, and they split up, obviously over a week or two, and the Cattleyas went left and the Dendrobiums went right. So the Dendrobiums tend to be found from sort of parts of India across to China and south down through the islands and those parts of the world and on into Australia as a genus. This one is found in northeast India across to China and then down through Myanmar and the countries down through there, right down to sort of Cambodia, so Thailand, Laos, all those countries there. And it's found at various elevations, so it would be classed as a cool to warm grower. In other words, the temperature is not the most important thing for this orchid. It'll put up with warmth and it'll put up with cooler temperatures. It probably grows best averaging the two, so intermediate temperatures would probably be okay, but, and there's a big but for this one, it is a seasonal Dendrobium, and that seasonal care is important or you are unlikely to get your blooms. That will be your down. You might get a lovely big healthy plant with lovely green leaves and everything, but no flowers. So the care at this time of year is very important. So we'll go over winter care, because that's where we are now. We're at the beginning of February. It's still winter time. This plant is currently resting. So what does that mean? That means it gets little or no food and it gets watered very infrequently. That does mean that the canes look a little bit shriveled as you go through winter, but that's important. But alongside that is temperature and light, and this is where this Dendrobium can be a bit finicky. It needs bright light in the winter, yeah, and it needs to be cooler than it was in the growing season. And this is where you can fool this type of orchid, is if you keep it shadier in its growing season and then keep it as bright as you can in the winter, the difference between the two is more extreme and you'll get more blooms. You'll get a better bloom. You'll get a blooming for a start. Now, as far as the temperatures are concerned, again, it needs to be cooler in the winter than it was in the growing season. How cool remains to be seen. You could experiment with it, but I suspect if you keep it too warm in the winter time, you will lose your blooming, or you won't get as many or as good a blooming. So that's the care it's currently under. Little or no food and very infrequent watering. And it will stay like that until the plant tells me to do something different. That will be signs of spikes, probably first, followed by some new growths. This plant will get taken off its mount and remounted during this season, but not now. Doing it when it's dormant might sound a good thing to do, but it'll struggle to get going because of the root disturbance. So it's better to do it when it's actively growing and it's got new roots coming. So that's that. They bloom in late winter, early spring, and sometimes later than that. That does vary, and again, that's down to light and temperature. The trigger for this to come into bloom and new growths up either at the same time or not long after is longer days and an increase in daytime temperatures, which I will artificially, well, not the light, I'll get the light anyway, but I will artificially increase my daytime temperatures, probably at the end of this month into the beginning of March. And we'll see if we can trigger this into growth early this year. So that's that. As far as the shape is concerned, you've got canes that are basically very narrow at the base, wider in the middle, and come to an apex with a single really leathery strong leaf. They're not a large plant, they're classed as small to medium, but they can clump up and form quite a large mass of canes. I would say that cane round the back is probably about as big as they get, and that's about, in old money, about 3 inches, 3.5 inches long. Some are smaller. These are old seed. This started out as a seedling, so this has been grown on. These are the little seedling pseudobulbs. Serve no purpose and can be taken off with a plant of this age. So there we go. That's what this one looks like. Where it comes from and the care it's getting at the moment. Now you'll notice I haven't done the care for the whole year. We've got a whole year to do it, and that's the idea of the Project Orchids. The care will come at the time of the video. So it will change as we go along, or it certainly will with this one. So there we go, that's orchid number 1, Dendrobium lindleyi. And the Project Orchids first phase, the first 8 videos, will get posted on Fridays each week until we've done all 8. So there we go.